Samoa Joe once again wins the AEW TNT Championship just weeks after he lost the title to Darby Allin last night on AEW Dynamite. Speaking of Joe, his fierce rival Wardlow is back in AEW, making his return last night to confront the new TNT champion. Jon Moxley defeats Hangman Adam Page, concluding their fierce rivalry. Kota Ibushi, could he be coming to AEW? Tony Khan has commented on the possibility of signing the former New Japan star. The AEW World Trios Championships will be defended Friday night on Rampage by the Elite. The Jericho Appreciation Society have announced an interesting gauntlet match for Ricky Starks next week. Saraya attacks Britt Baker backstage at Dynamite last night alongside Tony Storm and Jungle Hook. They have split up. Plus, AEW house shows are coming later this year. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. And let's start off talking about another TNT Championship change on Dynamite in recent months. It feels like this championship has been really and wildly, truly hot potatoed around, hasn't it? And there was an intense and brutal match in the main event of last night's AEW Dynamite, the February 1st edition of the show. And yet another incredibly brutal battle. Darby Allin defended his TNT Championship against Samoa Joe. While the match was no holds barred, the duo made complete use of the no disqualification stipulation as they used tables, chairs, and even a thumbtack sweatshirt against one another. Now, in the final moments of the match, Darby Allin took time to cut the ring canvas in order to expose the wooden slates or wooden plats, whatever you want to call them, beneath the ring. While the interruption may have eventually proved ill-advised for Allin, as when he returned to the ring, he was thrown by Joe over the top rope to crash into a table. With Samoa Joe now having the upper hand, he completed a muscle buster on Darby Allin onto the exposed wood of the ring, able to capture the pinfall victory. Samoa Joe is the brand new AEW TNT champion. However, his celebration was short-lived as he was immediately met with an attack by an old foe. One thing I will say just before moving on to this return, which we already said, it's Wardlow. This championship's been hot potatoed around a lot, and I'm desperate. Please, Tony Khan, please. I understand the need for surprises. I understand the need for, you never know what can happen when you tune into AEW Dynamite, and sometimes short title reigns aren't a bad thing, but the TNT Championship going back to, really, I suppose, all the way back to the end of last year. Not last year, 2021, with Cody Rhodes, Sammy Guevara. Cody Rhodes was a 3-time TNT champion by the time he left, and then Guevara was a 2-time TNT champion. Scorpio Sky won it a couple of times. Darby Allin's now held it a couple of times. It's really been a back and forth thing of having these short title reigns, and yes, again, I understand the need for surprises, but certainly the championship has been well and truly, as I mentioned, hot potatoed around. However, after Joe won this hard-fought battle, he was met with an old foe, that being Wardlow, a new look Wardlow, after Samoa Joe, of course, cut his hair the last time we saw the former TNT champion on the show. After a vicious main event on Dynamite, a star who hasn't been seen on television for over a month made his return to AEW TV. And he wasted no time in attacking the new TNT champion Samoa Joe. Wardlow made his return to AEW television with a new look to boot, as he appeared shortly after Joe reclaimed the TNT championship. After Samoa Joe previously bested Wardlow for the TNT championship, as well as cut off his ponytail, it made sense that he would be back with a vengeance. And a vengeance he certainly sought, as he immediately attacked Samoa Joe and attacked anyone else who attempted to stop him. Dynamite ended with Wardlow taking out all of the security at ringside and the visual of him about to throw one of them over the top rope, but the show ended before fans could catch the end of the spot. Wardlow really has a penchant for assaulting security officers, doesn't he? After his ponytail was so unceremoniously cut by Samoa Joe, Wardlow returned with a sharp new haircut while he remained as impeccably dressed as always. And it would appear, one would think, they're building towards Samoa Joe versus Wardlow once again for the TNT Championship, most likely given the proximity to the event that would take place at AEW Revolution. And if that is the case, one would think, given the way that Wardlow's been booked in AEW, which is heavily protected, he's only been defeated by a couple of people, you can count them on one hand, one being Samoa Joe, one would think that Wardlow is probably going to win the TNT Championship. So we spoke about the title being hot potatoed around. Looks like it's going to be hot potatoed all the way back to Wardlow at Revolution. Jon Moxley was back in action last night on Dynamite, squaring off against his rival Hangman Adam Page. He defeated the former Elite member with a brutal battle that kicked off last night's Dynamite with a mid-entrance brawl that lasted minutes before the bell rang. AEW Dynamite hosted a vicious fight between Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page, with a big brawl breaking out as Mox interrupted Hangman's entrance in a most violent fashion. When they finally made their way into the ring and the bell rang to officially begin the match, the violence certainly escalated, with both men bleeding by the middle of the match. The match was truly, as Jim Ross would say, a slobber knocker. In the end, it was a monstrous King Kong lariat by Moxley that laid out Hangman once again, as it did in their first encounter. However, this time Hangman wasn't knocked out, but it was certainly reminiscent of the one that led to the concussion for Hangman in Cincinnati, which unleashed a vicious response from Page. Hitting Mox with a tombstone pile driver, then a buckshot lariat, he seemed to have certainly won, but Moxley was still able to kick out. With Hangman applying his own version of the Bulldog choke on Moxley, Mox was able to counter into a small package pin and capture the victory. Now, while the match was over, the feuding doesn't seem to be over just yet, as Hangman Adam Page continued to stay in the ring, while Wheeler Yuta, Claudio Castagnoli stood between them, despite Mox not appearing particularly concerned about a potential to go again. So maybe this feud isn't over just yet, we don't know. One thing that was fantastic about Jon Moxley's entrance last night is actually featured his father. Yes, in his entrance last night, Jon Moxley was joined by fellow Blackpool Combat Club member Wheeler Yuta, as well as his father. Again, it was a pretty cool spot. I mean, talk about living the dream, right? Walking out into an arena full of people, chanting your name, cheering for you, walking out to an iconic Wild theme song as well, and then having your father alongside with you. That's pretty cool, and I think that Moxley would have enjoyed that, and obviously would have enjoyed his victory over Hangman Page last night as well. Kota Ibushi, of course, a lot of people talking about the future of the now former New Japan Pro Wrestling star, with many suggesting he could go to AEW, whilst Ibushi himself has distanced claims that he could sign with All Elite Wrestling. Well, AEW President Tony Khan has commented on the possibility of AEW signing Kota Ibushi following his New Japan departure. The former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion became a free agent at midnight on February 1st in Japan after his New Japan deal expired. Following this, it was reported by various outlets that there is major interest from a lot of companies in booking Ibushi. With Ibushi previously naming Hangman Adam Page as a dream opponent, it has been heavily speculated that Ibushi will soon wrestle in AEW. Speaking on Busted Open Radio, Tony Khan stated that AEW would definitely consider working with Ibushi in the future. Confirming that he has wanted to work with Ibushi in the past, Khan said, quote, "There are a lot of great free agents in the world of pro wrestling. Certainly Kota Ibushi is a great talent. When you have a name like that, everyone in the world of pro wrestling would be very fortunate to have in their promotion. We've wanted to work with him in the past, so it's certainly something we would have to consider." As I mentioned, Ibushi recently commented on the potential of an AEW run, not ruling it out, but having a preference to remain a freelancer as opposed to being committed to one promotion long term. But could he appear in AEW? It would appear at some point that could be a possibility. However, is it going to be a long-term thing? Is it going to be a one-off? We'll have to wait and see. Speaking of Ibushi, obviously people often associate him with The Elite, and The Elite are going to defend their titles this week on Rampage. On this week's AEW Rampage, there is set to be a big match for the AEW World Trios Championships, with The Elite defending their titles. Set up in a segment set at the Wright University Gym, The Elite was talking to the camera before they were interrupted by Ethan Page, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy, and of course, Stokely Hathaway. While they engaged in a brief exchange of words, this Friday on Rampage, they'll surely exchange fists as a big championship match was made. On AEW Rampage this Friday, the Elite, that being Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, will put their AEW Trios Championships on the line against Ethan Page, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy. Obviously, that was taped after Dynamite last night. We don't get into spoilers here, but I mean, I haven't even seen the spoilers, and I think, call me crazy, I think we might know who wins this one. An interesting match has been announced for next week's edition of Dynamite on TBS, featuring the Jericho Appreciation Society and Absolute Ricky Starks. Last night's AEW Dynamite announced a unique gauntlet match for next week's show amongst a big card of hard-hitting action. In a backstage segment, with the Jericho Appreciation Society, Sammy Guevara posted a challenge to Ricky Starks, naming the challenge the Garcia-Guevara Gauntlet after initially musing on the Guevara-Garcia Gauntlet, maybe a bit of a tease for a future match between the two JAS members. Ricky Starks will be tasked with taking on Cool Hand Angelo Parker. If he's successful, he then faces Daddy Magic, Matt Menard, before moving on to either Sammy Guevara or Daniel Garcia, but they'll let him know the night of. I think they'll probably end up facing both, honestly. If he's able to compete all 3 rounds of the gauntlet, he then earns an opportunity to face Chris Jericho. Now, whether that's facing Jericho that night, whether that's facing at Revolution, I would think it's probably going to be at Revolution. That's what they're building towards. They're building towards clearly another match, Jericho versus Starks at Revolution. They've already done the match once, so you would think they'd probably be building to some kind of gimmick match or something like that. Or maybe the JAS wins, next week and they kind of stretch out a little bit more. You can let me know what you think is going to happen in the comment section below. Saraya and Toni Storm really cementing their heel turn, and I guess a recent double turn when it comes to the AEW women's divisions. Footage of a backstage assault in progress broke into an interview segment with an AEW champion on last night's Dynamite. On last night's edition of the show, AEW Women's World Champion Jamie Hayter was in a backstage segment with the Bunny when her time to make a decision was cut short. While the Bunny was challenging Jamie Hayter to an eliminator match next week on Dynamite, footage began to roll of a backstage assault already in progress, featuring Saraya and Toni Storm attacking Hayter's friend and tag team partner, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Hayter quickly fled to the aid of Baker. The Bunny, for her part, didn't seem particularly bothered. We'll have to await the rundown of the card for next week's show on confirmation if the match was made or not. Nevertheless, one would expect it to be made. But again, it just further solidifies that we're getting this sort of heel turn, or we've already got this heel turn from Saraya and Toni Storm, and maybe Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter, they're turning babyface in the process. A lot of people have speculated this is going to be leading to the first ever women's blood and guts match. I tend to agree. When they would do that, I mean, Blood and Guts traditionally is around, April time, if I recall correctly, I think. So that would make sense. It's only a few months away, and they could build to something at Revolution, then they could build to something after that. That could certainly be a possibility. So we'll have to wait and see. Certainly, that's going to be a really interesting match if they decide to go in that direction. And considering all of the factions right now, there doesn't feel to be enough faction warfare for them to do that match. So, and to be honest, I say Blood and Guts. I mean, when was it last year? I think it was in June of last year, I believe. It might have been. I'm not sure. They can do it. Basically, they can do it whenever they want. Essentially, there isn't a time frame that they need to put on it, so they can do it whenever. Speaking of tag teams, one tag team that is no more is Jungle Hook. It was fun while it lasted. While AEW initially billed the combination of Jungle Boy Jack Perry and Hook as a one-night-only pairing, the two incredibly popular single stars were well received as a tag team. And although they did go on to team together again, now it seems we've reached the end of the cruise for Jungle Hook. Jungle Boy Jack Perry revealed he was planning on flying solo for the rest of 2023 in a backstage segment on last night's edition of Dynamite, noting that he's already done the tag team thing. He plans to forge ahead on his own from now on. No retort and no response from Hook is known, but he's now available to resume his occasional tag team partnership, I guess, with Danhausen, to reform another fan favorite duo in Hookhausen. But it would appear that Jungle Boy Jack Perry is going to be going after singles championship again. What those championships would be, I mean, it's got to be the AEW World Championship, the TNT Championship, I guess the All-Atlantic Championship. Maybe that's kind of the picture he would be best served in right now, him facing against Orange Cassidy. I suppose that could be a possibility, maybe. TNT Championship, that's involving Wardlow and Samoa Joe right now, so I don't think that one's going to happen anytime soon. But hey, you never know. But one thing we do know for sure is that Jungle Hook is done. Finally, it's been heavily rumored, but now it's officially been confirmed. AEW is getting in the house show business, or if you're in WWE, the live event business, because they are going to be now running their first ever series of non-televised live events. AEW sent out a press release prior to Dynamite last night confirming details for its first ever live event series, which is being called AEW House Rules. Now, again, this came out last night. AEW CEO, GM, and head of creative Tony Khan today announced the launch of AEW House Rules, a live event series taking place on select weekends in markets across the country, continuing the promotion's meteoric rise and following the success of AEW Dynamite on Wednesdays on TBS and AEW Rampage on Fridays on TNT. Fans can expect an up-and-close personal experience at local venues along with spectacular and engaging environment. These non-televised live events will showcase an electrifying mix of matchups featuring the stars of AEW. Each event offers an even more immersive experience for fans, including customized merchandise, unique ways to engage with featured talent, and in-show interactions different from what is featured on televised AEW programming. The first AEW House Rules show will take place on Saturday, March 18 in Troy, Ohio at the Hobart Arena and will feature Ohio's own Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Dr. Britt Baker, Darby Allin, Orange Cassidy, and many more. Tickets for all AEW House Rules shows start at $20 plus fees and can be purchased at AEWTix.com starting Friday, February 3rd at 10 a.m. Eastern. Further show dates will be announced in the coming weeks. And this is what Tony Khan said, quote, "As a lifelong fan of professional wrestling who grew up attending house shows, AEW House Rules is an exciting next step in our journey, giving fans a new level of access to top-tier professional wrestling," said Tony Khan. "We're always looking for meaningful ways to engage with our fans, and AEW House Rules will be a great way for them to connect with our incredible talent and experience AEW in an intimate setting. The extraordinary success of AEW changed the whole landscape of professional wrestling as a whole, not only by providing a fresh new product, but also by raising the bar in a manner that many deemed impossible a few years ago," said Jeff Jarrett, AEW's Director of Business Development. Now, as we expand to live house shows, fans can expect an innovative approach to get up close with the best talent in professional wrestling. In addition to satisfying the passions of die-hard fans, we're excited about creating new fans of all ages through these entertaining events. "I'm looking forward to teaming with Jeff Jarrett to oversee the expansion and growth of our live event touring schedule," said Raphael Morphy, AEW's VP of Live Events. "AEW House Rules ramps up our commitment to creating positive, memorable experience for fans at our shows, and we're thrilled to kick off the initiative on March 18 in Troy, Ohio." Certainly interesting. I mean, it was coming, and it's interesting the development of AEW because when they launched, they were very much a television wrestling company. They didn't do live events. They've only ever done one. That was the House Always Wins, which we still haven't seen. It was taped though, that one. Not that I think these ones will be. But at the time it was, you don't need house shows to succeed and you don't need house shows to be profitable. And you don't. That is accurate. The bulk of revenue nowadays comes from television rights, sponsorships, and all that kind of stuff. However, with AEW's roster getting bigger and bigger and bigger, with their budget getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to satisfy all of those people on the roster and to make a bit of extra money, make no mistake, they wouldn't be doing these events if they didn't think they were going to be profitable. They're now starting to expand into house shows, which it'll be interesting to see how well they do because even recently, some of the tapings for their television shows haven't been doing too well either. One would think they're going to run small venues and initially there'll be a novelty so people will attend them because they'll be fun, they'll be different. Long term, can they draw? That's the big question because even WWE on the house show loop, not every show draws well. Some do, some don't. And it's going to be interesting to see how AEW does that. And as I mentioned, they've got such a big roster, they can certainly do these events, but they've got to have talent that's able to draw. And a lot of the talent that are signed to AEW contracts aren't necessarily on contracts that have loads and loads of dates available that they can do these kind of shows. So is it going to lead to restructuring contracts, renegotiating contracts, or I don't know. That's going to be the really interesting thing about this is which talent's going to be on the show, how they're going to be featured, how are they going to draw. But certainly a lot of people will benefit from this. Matches, I think, will get better because of this. These botches or the sort of sloppiness that you see on television should get better because of this because you only improve by working regularly all the time. Now, I don't expect their live event schedule to be as intense as WWE, i.e. 5 nights a week in different cities. I expect it to be a bit lesser than that. But let's face it, as AEW expands, it's just going to grow more and more. It's going to get to a point where it's Dynamite live on a Wednesday. They would need, I think, to move Rampage to a Friday. Ring of Honor, what are they going to do with that? They're going to hold television tapings or they're going to do that live whenever that does launch on Honor Club. And now these house shows as well. The touring schedule gets bigger and bigger. And it's just funny all the time, isn't it? All these things that AEW said they weren't going to do at the start. We're not going to do what WWE does. Eventually they do because... And it's not to a detriment to AEW. It's just because that's what works. That's how pro wrestling works. It is what it is. So there you go, guys. It's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below. Have they been hot potato in the TNT Championship around too much? What do you think of Wardlow's return? What do you think of the Moxley Hangman match? Are you going to go to one of these AEW house show events? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.